Hello and welcome to my Welsh 3000s advice and tips video. Now I don't normally do videos like this, but I recently attempted the Welsh 3000s back in June, so a couple of months ago. And then reflecting back on it as I wrote up the walk and started editing the video, there were a few sort of bits of advice and tips that I wish I'd known prior to planning and starting the walk. So I thought I'd compile them into a bit of a video and then allow people to kind of use that advice in their own planning. So point number one is about food. Now you're going to need a lot of food. It's a long walk, it's 55 kilometers, which is about 34 miles, and 4,000 meters of ascent, so it's half the height of Mount Everest that you're going to be climbing. So naturally you're going to need a lot of food and very high calorie food. When I did my Welsh 3000s, I packed lots and lots of sandwiches, lots of chocolate, and lots of sort of biscuits, and also some hot food that I could cook along the way as well. So lots of snacks. I don't like nuts, but people obviously suggest that they should take nuts as well, as they are very, very high in fat and also high in calories as well. Now, my advice on the food is obviously take lots of it, but really diversify what you're going to take. So I went through an entire loaf of bread with my sandwiches, and by the time I got to probably the Gleaders, halfway along, couldn't eat anymore, really sick of eating it. So I would recommend in having maybe 4 or 5 different types of food that you can eat throughout the day, just to stop you from getting bored and not wanting to eat, because you need to keep those calories going in. So point number 2 is about walking poles. Now I've never, prior to walking the Welsh 3000s, ever used walking poles, and now I can't stop using them. So, oh god, I reckon I've been walking for 20 years in the mountains, and yeah, so only recently in the last couple of months I've ever started using them, and it really does give you that little bit of extra sort of endurance, especially when you're going up and down hill. And simply because of the length of the walk, I'd strongly recommend taking some walking poles. The 2 people I did the walk with also took walking poles, and one broke halfway when we were coming down from the Gleader towards Trefan, and we actually thought, that's it, you know, we can't carry on without that extra walking pole for the extra support. Definitely get a bit of practice in before using them, but walking poles is a definite. So point number 3, and that is recce some of the peaks. So the principal reason why we failed to do the Welsh 3000s was literally because we didn't know what one of these peaks was going to be like when we ascended it. So it was Year Ellen, which is towards the end of the walk. You've already done near enough the whole lot of the ascent, there's only a little bit left to do. But we were descending down from, is it Carned Llewellyn? And the path just got steeper and steeper as we went down, and to the point where we couldn't even see the path anymore. It just kind of went over an edge. And at night time, with no moon and a head torch that kept turning itself off, we decided to end our attempt at that point just for safety, because we couldn't see where we were going, and it wasn't safe enough really. Now, for a lot of people, you're going to want to scout out things like Crib because that is a proper knife edge. You'll definitely want to do that during the daytime, and then do a couple of circular walks to take in a few of the other peaks north of Nordwand, so you can kind of get used to the area that you're going to be traversing at night time, so you roughly know where you're going. Tip number 4 is not to drive back once you've finished the walk. So when myself and my friends actually attempted the route, we got a taxi to the start, we had a van parked at the base of Trefan in case we couldn't do any more, which was roughly 20 miles in, and then my car was parked at the end. Now, I didn't anticipate how tired I was going to be. Obviously I'd been walking for 25 hours, I'd done 3,800 odd meters of ascent, and I hadn't slept through the night. And then I'd obviously planned to drive back to the campsite, which was about a 40-minute drive, and I have to say it was probably one of the most dangerous drives I've ever done. Don't ever attempt that. Can you get someone to pick you up at the end or get a taxi at the end? It's just not safe for one person to drive back unless you're going to sleep for a couple of hours in the car before you leave. So tip number 5 is to think of the walk as 3 separate walks. That really helped me get through mentally. So when we got dropped off at the top of Penny Pass, think of it as one walk up Snowdon via Crib or Snowdon, and then down via Cribgoch, all the way to Namperis as a single walk, and just think that's all I've got to do. And then when you get down there, have a rest, have a drink, have something to eat, and then think I've got one more walk to do, and that is to go over Elidiffower, the Gleaders and Trafan, and down to Glenogwen. And then when you get there, think I've got just one walk to do, and that is over the rest of the 7 peaks, which is quite a big walk. It's like 12 or 13 miles. But once you've gone up that one last big bit of ascent, there's only small sections left, which is really, really kind of good mentally, knowing that you've only got those maybe 100 meters at a time, rather than a full 600 or 700 meters like previous sections. So think of it as 3 separate walks, and it's really, really good mentally. And the final tip that I can think of is to try and plan it around a full moon. Now, you're going to want good weather, not necessarily hot or anything like that, but relatively clear, so you get some nice views, but also a clear night. So when we walked it, we got to Penny Ol Wen just as the sun was setting. So that's the first of the last lots of peaks as you sort of traverse north along all the mountains. Now, our issue is the fact that we had no moon at all. Absolutely nothing. It wasn't even a waxing crescent or anything, nothing. So we literally had just our head torches. Whereas if you plan it around at least a half moon, perhaps 3/4, preferably a full moon, you'll actually have quite a decent amount of ambient light around you, so you can sort of minimise any reliability on head torches, and some of it you might even be able to navigate without any head torches at all, which would be really nice. So plan around a full moon. I hope those tips do help you plan your own route up the Welsh 3000s. It is a fantastic challenge, really, really tough. By far the hardest walk I've ever done in my life. And knowing these new bits of information, we're going to be planning our next attempt of the Welsh 3000s, and I believe it's going to be June again next year, have the longest amount of daylight, but also we're going to plan it around that full moon so it's not completely dark at night. Take care and happy planning and happy walking.